And all I gotta say, the theme for this week, for people who are wondering, which side of Steel Nations are going to be in, satisfied with staying in competition for a long run, or people who are frustrated, with not seeing any lack of playoff wins, 0-5 since 2017. Well, Art Rooney and the Steelers have made it clear earlier, as it was confirmed, announced by on Steelers.com, that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have agreed to a 3-year contract extension, which will keep them through the 2027 season. Excuse me, by the way. Uh, that will be for 21 seasons, and the longest tenured Steelers coach in franchise history was Chuck Noll, who spent 23 seasons from 1969 through 1991. Of course, famous for delivering the franchise's only legit dynasty back in the 70s, the Steel Curtain, where they won 4 and 6 years. And all I just gotta just say right now, 3 words: like it, like them, hate them, respect them, neutral, however you may feel, not for sale. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition here of the Men of Steel podcast, which, of course, yours truly, Charles the Prodigy Richie. And just real quickly, just dealing with some, not sciences, but as you can imagine, the summer weather here. I got my fan blowing on me in the background, but yeah, just trying to just stay hydrated as best I can. Everything's good other than that. But like I said, um, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this past Monday, I mean, it's almost like right now when you hear the news of this contract extension, for the people who are frustrated, it's legitimate. And you just think back to what Art Rooney said with the interview with Bob Papiani. When you express urgency as far as trying to play deep into January, someone left with the impression. Now, he did state in that same interview, let's not forget, that they were satisfied with Mike Tomlin as their head coach. But one would think, was there going to be a small chance that, because remember, we didn't hear no contract negotiations up until recently when it got announced this past Monday. Now, I'm not saying they weren't talking before, but right now, you got to look at it right now. I mean, clearly, Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada, that project has bombed during and the post Ben Roethlisberger era, more particularly with Kenny Pickett, who pretty much forced his way out of Pittsburgh. Now the focus has got to be how you develop these young quarterbacks right now. Of course, your new offense coordinator, Arthur Smith, former head coach of the Falcons, trying to go to like a similar run style offense and a lot more of an attitude and pop for the season. I think that's going to be the most important thing that needs to be focused here. Uh, I get it. I think right now I'm a frustrated fan too, and an observer looking from a real standpoint. Now, Art Rooney, I mean, let's just accept it for what it is. As long as Mike Tomlin continues to produce non-losing seasons, keeps them in position where they're competing for the playoffs, staying playoff relevant, and then he's got the respect of players in the locker room. You heard a lot, many veterans like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and others go back for Mike Tomlin. They did not want to play pretty much for anyone else. That was during even towards the end of last season, which almost turned into be a debacle, which they turned around, making yet another playoff berth. Mike Tomlin's 11th as head coach during his long tenure run as coach of the Steelers. Only disappointing thing is, once again, one and done in the playoffs. And it just seems to be, at this point, what message are we really sending here? I mean, you could look at this thing a couple of ways. I mean, and Bob Papiani brought up a good point too on Joe Starkey's show on 93.7 The Fan. Now, remember when Bill Cowher, he got extended, I believe, in the late 90s, early 2000s, at the expense of Tom Donahoe, who was then their Steelers GM before Kevin Colbert came to the picture. Now, remember, he went through at least two straight uh, losing seasons, not making the playoffs. Actually turned out to be three in a row, as a matter of fact, uh, where he finally got a winning season in 2000, just shy of missing the playoffs, but they got back in 2001, where they went all the way to the AFC Championship game. Gross Stewart had a reawakening, but once again, falls short going to the Super Bowl. But still, they remained patient with the process right there. And at the same time, too, they got rewarded when they finally found their guy in Ben Roethlisberger, who got selected, I believe it was 11th overall in that year's draft in 2004. And they were able to go from there and get two Super Bowls, one with Cowher and then the other with Mike Tomlin. And both coaches either way, I mean, you look at them like the transitions. I mean, Bill Cowher did inherit Chuck Noll's team when he came in there and guided them eventually to a Super Bowl in his fourth season. And which of course he lost, but he still went through a rebuild of his team in the late 90s. And you saw right there, I mean, with the influx of players right there, where you had guys like James Ferrier, Troy Polamalu, Ike Clark, Joey Porter right there. The new nucleus of defense players that will eventually fit into Dick LeBeau's scheme, who actually came back, I believe, in '04 to help turn things around. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, is there something to be said right there? The Steelers right now. I mean, when you look at all their coaches, I mean, all three of their coaches right now. I mean, as a matter of fact, when you want to like dissect this and be like technical right here, I mean, all the history. It's very rare you see coaches stay with a franchise beyond 10 years. Now, when you look at it right now, I mean, for the most part, I mean, you got George Halas at first, the founding owner and the head coach of the Bears. He coached for 40 seasons, followed by Curly Lambeau of the Green Bay Packers, who's tied with Tom Landry, each with 29 years apiece. Next up at third is Don Shula of the Miami Dolphins, and you got Bill Belichick, who actually just who recently parted ways with Robert Kraft and the Patriots, 24 seasons. And after that, uh, you got for fifth Chuck Noll and Steve Owen at 23 seasons, and Bud Grant at 18th. Now, if Mike Tomlin completing this season, he will move into a tie with Bud Grant for sixth tenure coaches. He has served 17 seasons, but at the end of this season will be 18 by the time, as long as he decides not to walk away or feels any pressure from within his inner circle. I doubt it's going to be from the front of, I mean, Art Rooney or anybody right now at this point. But I mean, look at the fact though, too. I mean, someone view it too. I mean, was Mike Tomlin's poll being a little bit like slipped away, was slipping away a little bit. I mean, when you have guys like Andy Weidel and Omar Khan working together at the GM spot to kind of help uh, reconstruct and reload some of this roster right here, you would have to think so. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, the Steelers always like to pride themselves as a model franchise of stability. But the problem is when you go through like this model of stability right here, what do you keep expecting right here? And it's just for right now, I think the only thing I could say right now is that listen, you may have found the quarterbacks that could really make this thing work. Russell Wilson, who's pretty much on his last legs right now, any moment. I mean, they got him for cheap at the vet minimum, basically this year for a 1 year deal, along with Justin Fields. Well, I believe they did a 1 year extension instead of picking up his fifth year option right here. So I mean, there's some like little fun, creative ideas they could do with Justin Fields before he gets his motor running and learns behind Russell Wilson under Arthur Smith's system with Mike Tomlin, where he may be the eventual star of this team. Now, Jerry Dulac did say, despite the longest tenure coaching at Bell, Tomlin is not the highest paid, but he is right near the top at approximately 11 to $12 million annually, and he will continue to stay there as long as he desires. And like I said, three words: not for sale. For anybody that's hoping to see the Steelers and Mike Tomlin part ways, whereas teams like the Chicago Bears, uh, maybe the New York Giants or the Jets. I mean, you can even make an argument possibly for the Dallas Cowboys right now. I mean, Mike McCarthy, I mean, who seems to right now on his seems to be like a lame duck coach more than likely, I would imagine, with that situation, trying to go all in with Dak Prescott and try and turn around a season where they could get back to Super Bowl contention, if not win a Super Bowl. Feels like that's slipping away. But I mean, right now, you think of a lot of teams right now, and two, Paul Zeiss also brought up another good point too. When you look at like what he has done, I mean, especially from the last 7 years. I mean, the only problem is with this offense is which has been the killer part right now, and you got still a somewhat respectable defense. Only problem is they're giving up 40 points a game, but think about this right here too. I mean, when you had the Killer Bee era back then, I mean, they were at least ranked top 10 in points scored. Now, since then, since the end of that run, began in 2018, which is Antonio Brown's final year before they cut the cord with him after the 2018 season, that has dropped down more than about half that mark. So they've been average 20th in the league with 2,008 points, 21.1 points per game as opposed to 25 and a half with Killer Beer. And then also at the same time, too, when they failed to come to a new contract agreement with Le'Veon Bell, you had the growth for an inconsistent run game. We saw some nice promise earlier on from James Conner, who just could not stay healthy. Scrimmage production, but I mean, he probably only had one more good season after that. I mean, if at all, maybe half a season. But that's been a big thing right now too. And the thing is too with Najee Harris, they have not picked up his fifth year option, so you gotta be wondering how much he's gonna do to like really put out his best performance. Who actually has been their consistent runner. I mean, every year he's rushed the ball. He's had 1,000 yard seasons. Now, let's not take that away. The only thing is with a guy like Najee is that you have to wait for him to warm up a little bit to really get production. So we are talking right now, kicking off this podcast. Of course, the news of the week: Mike Tomlin. He extended for 3 more years. He's gonna be here for at least 21 seasons and counting right now. And I will just say this too. I mean, you keep saying a similar phrase after every contract extension, or you know when they're 1-0 in the playoffs until proven otherwise, until they make a long run, or whenever they get their butts handed in the playoffs or eliminated. It's like we didn't do enough to bring home a seventh Lombardi. Really? See, and that's the thing. I will continue to be grateful that he is their head coach, but I'm not. I'm losing a lot of patience right now. I'm in that boat right now where it's like, yeah, listen, I think that from a national perspective versus local, it's clear the frustration on both sides. We get it. The only thing is, if you're really being that serious, you should at least be AFC Championship game minimal to like really be like knocking on the door against a Super Bowl. At least for Bill Cowher's credit, I mean, despite having a losing record in AFC Championship games, and most of those at home, by the way, pretty much all of them at home except for his last one, which ironically was on the road. He never won on the road until his final playoff run, which was 2005, and where they became the first six seed to wild card team to win a Super Bowl right there. So first time ever in history in the NFL where you see a team as number six seed would make a valiant run, bring home the one for the thumb that year. And that's where we're at right now. I just it makes no sense. I'm sure right now, I mean, the optimism has to be on a scale of 7 right now that they can get this offense back on track. You finally got yourself a offense coordinator. We'll see what sounds good on paper. Despite a guy who's had 3 straight 7-10 seasons as a Falcons head coach, now coming into Pittsburgh right now. It seems like they might have something going right here, and I could see that. I mean, with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren continuing. The only thing is, when I look at this extension, it almost seems like definitely on the public perception, majority wise, that you're pretty much want this guy to become the all-time winningest coach in franchise history. I mean, basically what you're saying right there. I mean, and you look at it right there. I mean Chuck Noll right now, who has 193 regular season wins, as opposed to Mike Tomlin's 173, needs 21 more wins to pass him in the regular season. But career wins, uh, Chuck Noll's got 209 to Mike Tomlin's 181, so he needs to at least get 29 more victories in total with regular and the playoffs to officially pass Chuck Noll in career wins. And as far as coaches, yellow and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's just honestly what this says to me. But Art Rooney making a statement too when the contract extension was announced that Mike Tomlin's leadership and commitment to the Steelers had been pivotal to our success during the first 17 years as head coach. Extending his contract for 3 more years reflects our confidence in his ability to guide the team back to winning playoff games and championships while continuing our traditional success. I just did Ben Roethlisberger. I still changed the championship with a plural championships. Excuse me there for messing up that quote. Mike Thomas, of course, when receiving this extension, I'm appreciative for this contract extension and thankful for Art Rooney the second for his support during my first 17 years in Pittsburgh. We're continuing to work diligently to get back to where we belong. Sustain playoff success with the ultimate goal of winning the franchise's 7th Lombardi trophy. And when you say sustain playoff success, that's another thing right there that just riddles me a little bit. What do you mean by that? I'm sure it has to mean going deep into January or early February at this point. I mean, if the NFL decides to extend their games to 18, which is inevitable, which will be coming up in a few years, definitely some pushback by the players' union. But yeah, I mean that sounds it doesn't sound vague. Something right there, it just doesn't sound crystal clear. Do you mean you want to still be competing for a playoff spot, getting in the dance? Not saying you don't want to win, but that's an incomplete statement if you ask me, right there. I I mean, you're pretty much kind of half heartedly answer the question right there by saying that. I have a problem with that statement right there. I love Mike Tomlin, a hell of a job. He has definitely done a lot more with less. I mean, you gotta start wondering right now too, is he really the right guy for the situation going forward? But I mean, as long as you got owner like Art Rooney, I mean, until you have someone else come into the picture running things, or they decide to sell the team, which I don't think they will. I'm not saying they're going to sell the team, but if you ever have someone that takes over from Art Rooney's second, will someone see it differently? And of course, Dan Rooney too. I mean, who was there with his father Art. I mean, remember pre Super Bowl era, they were an NFC team, an NFL team for 4 decades. I mean, they had a lot of losing seasons, only one playoff appearance, and no playoff wins. That didn't start happening until the 70s when they drafted Franco Harris. They had a 8-year run right there, 8 straight playoff appearances, which also counted the Steel Curtain Dynasty 4 Super Bowls where they went 4-0, 4 and 6 years. Now, when that team did start to break up as it got near the mid 80s, right there, and Terry Bradshaw actually retired in 1983, and then you had your guys like little by little, Joe Green in 81, I think Jack Ham, I want to say after the 82 season, of course, Mel Blount and Terry Bradshaw back in 83. I mean, you just saw right there he could never rekindle that same chemistry, the same elite style players. I mean, yes, you did get Rob Woodson, Dermani Dawson, Neil Dono, which borderline, but I still think he was somewhat of a good bridge gap quarterback. You still had to go technically, even after he moved out of town, you at least had to go for I mean, right there, an 8-year gap before they got Ben Roethlisberger when he went over to the New York Jets in free agency, I believe, after their Super Bowl loss to the Cowboys. Now, Dan Rooney, he did eventually put pressure on Chuck Noll and pretty much where he was pretty much forced out. Bill Cowher came in, and you saw what happened right there. So maybe there is something to be said. Let's stay tuned on it right now. But like I said, I am, for one, when you keep saying sustained playoff success, what does that mean, Mike Tomlin? Please, I hope that means that you're going to do everything you can when a situation arises. You get back in there, you find a way to be focusing on ball security, not giving up 40 points a game, but quarterback play. As we're reminded once again in this recent fatal loss to the Bills in Buffalo. Now, swinging things over here in the Pittsburgh Steelers, Arthur Smith and minicamp. Arthur Smith got a chance to sit down with Missy Matthews, and here's his opening statement as he talked to her this week.
Coach, since you joined the organization, a few things have changed in terms of quarterbacks. The wide receiver was traded away. How does that impact the offense that you want to run here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the rosters, the way that the NFL is set up now, I mean, it's very transactional, so things are fluid. And certainly at the quarterback position, as we made those moves and got to study both Russ and Justin and Kyle and even Big Junior Plumlee, you're trying to see what their strengths are, what we've been putting in, and it's been fun. It really has, getting to know all four of those quarterbacks and watching these guys compete.
Specifically with Russ and Justin Fields, how do they fit into your style of offense?
Well, both of them made a lot of plays in this league, in big moments. We're not so rigid. Every year I've tried to adapt. We have our core beliefs. There's things that they've historically done well, that we try to enhance, and there's other things that we've put in that fit really our overall personnel.
And there you have it right there. Talking with Miss Matthews right now as we're on mandatory minicamp right now, June 11th to the 13th. As you look at the current quarterback roster right now, as presented to you by ourlads.com, I mean, Russell Wilson still marked as QB1. Now, remember, Mike Tomlin didn't make that clear due to his experience, followed by Justin Fields. Then after that, you got Kyle Allen, and then you got John Plumlee. Those are the four quarterbacks he was talking about right there. But, I mean, more particular with Fields and Wilson right there, he seems pretty excited. I mean, to really maximize potential. I really feel confident about a guy, Arthur Smith, going this year. He loves the opportunity with the revamped Steelers offense. And one of the cool, interesting things about Smith, how he got this job, who had been a coach with the Falcons for 3 seasons, promised his wife Allison. They were going on a vacation after the season. They were in Dubai on their way to the Maldives. Excuse my pronunciation. When he received the call from Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin asking if he'd be interested in interviewing for his open offensive coordinator position. When Mike called me, I was literally halfway around the world, and I was like, heck yeah, I'm interested, Smith said. Tuesday, the Steelers kicked off their first day of mandatory minicamp at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. He goes on to say, I have such an appreciation of the history of this game and guys that have been big mentors to me, either have coached here or played here. I could go on and on, Smith said. Mike Vrabel was a player here, and I've worked for Vrabes. He had big influence. Mike Mularkey, Russ Grimm, Dick LeBeau. I've got guys I coach with in Tennessee, for Deshaun Johnson to Nick Eason. There's so many guys, players, and coaches that swear by his place. And so when Mike called me about finding out timing in life works, And those are things right there. I mean, definitely. I mean, definitely gonna be a lot on him right here. That's gonna be the emphasis right now. Is I mean, like I said, glad to have Mike Tomlin for another 3 years. More opportunities to get this thing right, see how they turn around. But Russell Wilson, who also spoke too after the first mandatory minicamp practice, he wanted to address about 2 minute drill. He said 2 minutes is everything. That's where you win the game, according to Wilson. You've got to love the game and the excitement on the line in the fourth quarter. You've got to love those fourth quarter moments. I look forward to them. And see, right there, for a lot of people who are still doubting if Russell Wilson is going to find a way to make it for the season, hold on to it over Justin Fields. I'd like that right there for right now. Now that could still all change too. I mean, Justin Fields is ready to grab the reins from Russell and get ready to come back in there. I will just say this for right now. I think they're in great competitive spirits right now. Uh, And he goes on to say, I think the versatility of our players, said Wilson, it starts with the offensive line. Those guys up front, how physical they are, the tone being set in offense in that manner. We're just growing, we're just getting better every day, and that's the key. And no doubt about it right there. So that's going to do it for this section of the Steelers right now. Thank you for watching the Meta Steel podcast with your host, Charles Price Ritchie, here on YouTube. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And for all the latest Meta Steel podcast episodes, feel free to download them on Mixcloud, Anchor.fm, and SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.